What's up, everyone? Welcome to the second lesson on generative fill. If you have missed the previous one, we highly recommend checking it out. I think it's always helpful to get that full context and perspective on how to use these tools effectively. Today, we are having a short lesson, but a fun one. We are going deeper. We'll talk about guided generation. It's pretty useful and very underrated tool, so without further ado, let's get at it. All right, here's the task. Put a tree in this area. That's all. Put any kind of tree here. So let's try with the lasso tool again, just a simple one. We will mark an area where we roughly want the tree to be. And without overcomplicating things, let's just ask for a tree. And I'm looking a bit into the future, but I bet it will generate some problems. Perfect. Thanks, Photoshop. Always pleasure working with you. Yeah, as you can see, this is where it gets tricky. I could keep doing more and more iterations, but let's be real, hitting something good is practically impossible this way. At best, it might generate a corner branch, but getting something truly interesting, that would make a small miracle. So let's look at some smarter ways. Let us introduce the concept of guided selection. Here's the idea. We want to give AI some directions, a shape or outline of a tree. And to do it, I drew something before, here it is, nothing fancy. Just take a hard brush and sketch out something that feels appropriate. Now, fair warning, the workflow here is a little bit janky, not gonna lie. It might seem logical to use the lasso tool or even layer selection, and sometimes it works with lasso, but in this case, we need to do a little bit of a workaround. We will use the selection brush. The selection brush is a tool that let us make selections with different levels of opacity. You can use it to draw directly onto the canvas, and yeah, this is how the selection is added, and we can subtract it by holding Alt. The more magenta we have, the higher the percentage of selection, and the less magenta, yeah, the lower selection. So this way, just to sum it up, AI has more creative freedom where there's more selection, when there's magenta deeper, and less freedom where it's lighter. Okay, so now we can load the current selection. Having the selection brush active, it will immediately fill up the 100% selection. We can lower the opacity by half. And I'm pressing Alt to remove 50% of the selection. This forces the AI to take into account what's underneath, like the black outline of the tree we sketched. And let's see how it reacts to this setup. Yeah, this is exactly what you wanted, right? I mean, okay, we have the shape perfectly filled the tree substance. And yeah, we are not there yet. It looks a little bit odd because we drew the shape very roughly. The tree looks like super dead, and we didn't plan any space for the leaves to appear, but we can take it a little bit further and solve those issues as well. So let's go back to the point where we had 50% of selection. At this stage, I can also paint additional selections to increase AI's freedom in a way. And again, the more magenta, the more freedom. I hope that this will increase the chances of generating a crown here. Maybe extending the trunk. Yeah, that's good. I think I'll keep some shapes untouched as well. So let's see what happens now. Beautiful. We are slowly moving forward. It's not looking perfect, but at the same time, remember, it doesn't need to be perfect. Not from the get-go. You should consider generative fill as a success whenever you get that initial foothold. That's the most important thing. And at this point, we have the perfect start to modify the tree even further, to create a rich and lush crown full of leaves. I will show you a quick time-lapse of this process. We will show you some of the techniques you already know and play a little bit with the guided generation as well. It's always nice to see them in action, just to inspire you for different usages. For example, you can sample the shades of green nearby. You can choose a brush that will imitate the leaves and start brushing the colors in. We are just attempting to create a crown. And as you can see by the magenta color, we use the guided generation brush again. We play with the opacity of it to give Firefly more or less creative freedom, just as we did a minute ago. And we type in lush green foliage to generate something. And boom, one step at a time. We can obviously use the lasso tool. We will start with a big selection, but we will remove parts of it next. This is the way to increase our chances of a better generation. This is to anchor the generation. If you haven't seen it, we discussed it in the previous lesson. And little by little, we move ahead. We alternate between guided generation and using lasso tool. This process is far from 3D, I'm not gonna lie, and it doesn't help that the tree is in the foreground. In a commercial scenario, we would definitely like to have this tree already in 3D, but I want to show you that this generative fill is an incredible tool to be familiar with. I also want to look for different opportunities like this. You can always fix trees in the background, even middle ground. You can also use this to sketch, if you need to come up with some cool composition, whatever. Possibilities are endless. Just keep in mind that you need to go bit by bit and it won't look perfect immediately. We will run it through Magnifique in a moment and all our problems and sorrows will go away. So as it usually goes with Magnifique, we can give it more or less creative freedom, upscale 2 times, 4 times, 8 times, whatever, and boom, we are finally brushing the final details in. We see that we get significantly more fidelity and more sense out of it. And I must admit, for a tree that was generated in literally 5 minutes, it's quite nice. Guided generation is incredibly powerful. And yeah, the best case scenario, you should have some drawing skills. We'll definitely encourage you to step out of the only in 3D bubble and let's start experimenting with drawing. And if you cannot, you can always aid yourself with silhouettes or I don't know, something like this, trees, animals, whatever. It's super effective for generating interesting results. Okay, moving on. This is another example using literally the same guided approach. A bit silly on our side. Bart did it. I had nothing to do with it. But anyway, it shows how flexible the techniques are. We have a silhouette on the left and generation plus upscale on the right. By the way, I think there's something wrong with her anatomy. That leg looks extremely long, but hey, we can be great at everything. Okay, circling back. Let me show you even more. Here's a fun one, more of a fun fact though. We have different success rates with it, but I think it's something you should be familiar with as well. You can use a silhouette as we did before, but you can actually play with the shading of the silhouette. Let me show you here. We'll try to throw a blanket over the sofa. Let's say we want to have something like this, roughly in this color, so that it fits the rest of the design. And now we can add some elements like folds in the fabric and yeah, maybe something that we would expect here. Of course, this is quite a stretch, but let's see what we get. And we will give more creative freedom than last time, because I know that the elements I've drawn here, they leave much to be desired, but there we go. We have the results. And in this case, even though the plaid doesn't quite fit the style, but at least we got something in return. In this case, it was like meh, but as I said, there will be cases that we will rely on it very heavily. And if you put your mind into it, you'll find similar cases as well. Even here, we had situations where it worked really, really nicely, like this one. In this case, we have a bear rendering on the left. As a cherry on top of the cake, we have the Magnifique pass on the right. So it worked quite nicely overall, so something you might consider in the future. And here it's an absolute banger when you want to add animals. I'll run a quick time lapse and give you some final comments about this too. We obviously generated a cat. What's nice about it is that we drew a rough outline and used selection brush to guide AI. We wanted to keep the body shape intact, but gave more freedom to Firefly to figure out the contact shadow area. Okay, so that's that. Later in this training, we will use guided generation to create a monkey. Obviously, monkeys are cool as well. We also use guided generation to create the gown in the penthouse example. I don't want to get too much ahead of myself, but yeah, all I'm gonna say, it's pretty damn useful and you should definitely try it out. And that's about it. I hope you enjoyed the AI heavy classes. We are done with the so-called AI introduction. We needed to show everything, even though it's pretty basic, but next up, we will start juggling 3D and AI at the same time. It will get much more interesting as we go, so thanks and see you in the next one.